a long time ago, in an internet far, far away. Many of us still remember the day when BioWare dazzled us with a cinematic experience like no other. The first trailer for the Old Republic video game.
This will be a day long remembered.
We watched with wide eyes at the visual beauty and brutal horror of the Sith invasion of the Jedi Temple that culminated in one of the best lightsaber duels between Darth Malgus and Jedi Master Zallow. And the masterpiece didn't end there.
This is where the fun begins.
Why do we still love this 15-year-old trailer and the Old Republic story so much? Well, let's find out. Over the years, BioWare gave us 5 more short films set in what is undoubtedly the favorite era of many Star Wars fans. Although the first trailer came out in 2009, the video game Knights of the Old Republic was released in 2003. That earlier game quickly grew in popularity, as it involved players in a time where Sith had an order as big as the Jedi, and when wars existed not only between 2 factions, but among the Sith themselves. So, if we add that to the iconic characters like Darth Revan, Darth Malak, Bastila Shan, Kreia, and Carth Onasi, and you've got a winning recipe. But what many viewers have found exciting about these trailers is that the connected lore and stories are so vast and interesting that 2 movie trilogies about the Old Republic era could easily follow the same formula with which George Lucas made the original saga. To start, we have the perfect threat, Emperor Valkorion, who founded the Infinite Eternal Empire and became one of the greatest Sith lived for over a millennium. Of course, this was all thanks to the fact that he had achieved a level of immortality and had founded several organizations such as the Shadow Council, which was equivalent to the Jedi Council we know from the prequels. But while the story of Revan, Malak, and Bastila Shan could be equivalent to the prequel trilogy, the story we are presented with in the trailers involving Malgus, Satele Shan, Zallow, and the Emperor's children, Arkan, Thexan, and Valen could be the equivalent of the original trilogy. Okay, let's briefly examine these stories and see why they're so fascinating. And maybe later we can ask ourselves, why the heck doesn't Disney make a trilogy out of this, instead of looking to give Rian Johnson a trilogy? Let's take the trailers one at a time. Even though some of them were in reverse order when they were released, we're going to follow the story chronologically. The Old Republic takes place 4,000 years before the Battle of Yavin. Master Keo Sen Darach, his Padawan, Satele Shan, and Captain Jace Malcolm escort smuggler Nico Okar to a base on Korriban, the ancient homeworld of the Sith. Suddenly, they fall under attack by the Sith Empire in a campaign led by Darth Finnegan and his Padawan, Darth Malgus. While trying to escape, Keo and Satele engage the Sith warriors while Nico and Malcolm ready the ship to flee. In a noble sacrifice, so that the 3 others can get away, Master Keo decides to face the Sith alone. With an impressive display of skill, Keo manages to incapacitate Finnegan, but unfortunately, Malgus finishes off the Jedi Master. Having recaptured Korriban, Malgus puts an end to his master for good and stands as the new commander of the Legion. So, here we can witness several things. A classic group of heroes of different ranks and abilities, a young Jedi girl, a captain of the Republic Army, and an anti-hero with a classic space cowboy look. It's the perfect cocktail of protagonists for the audience to follow. We also see a Sith apprentice rise in power and evil. And the mentor's farewell to his student can be compared to the death of Obi-Wan in Episode 4 or Qui-Gon in Episode 1, which is a good start for the apprentice to continue growing and becoming stronger. At the end of just one trailer, all the storytelling pieces are already on the board. In the following part, we see how Alderaan is invaded by the vicious troops of Malgus, but a group of brave soldiers led by Captain Malcolm make a final stand. In an amazing display of strength and endurance, he manages to plow down several droids and even manages to get pretty close to facing Malgus. Unfortunately, his human power is no match for the Sith, and he is injured, on the verge of death. Only then, Satele arrives and joins the battle, managing to counter the power of Malgus, even being able to stop a thrust of his saber with the Force.
Insignificant next to the power of the Force.
After another attempt by Captain Malcolm to stop Malgus and almost succeeds, it is Satele who gives the final blow, sending Malgus crashing against the rocks. In the end, they emerge victorious from the battle, giving sign of hope to the galaxy by freeing the planet. During this time, the story is further enriched as several characters develop relationships, and Malgus allies himself with Shae Vizsla, known as Mandalore the Avenger. And of course, these events take place in another recognizable location, the homeworld of our beloved Princess Leia. Also, the actions that end this battle leave our villain injured to the point that when we see him next, half his face is hidden in a respirator mask. This brings us to the epic duel between Malgus and then Zallow at the Jedi Temple, which resulted in a Sith invasion, not only of the temple, but of Coruscant, where even the Supreme Chancellor was assassinated. This bleak ending would show the power of the Sith and its fullness, similar but different from the Empire in the original trilogy. While the Sith Empire was in control of a large part of the galaxy, Malgus served in the shadows, hunting Jedi, which could connect perfectly with the footage starring Sahara Kantine and her master. As we said earlier, it would be easy for showrunners of an Old Republic trilogy to convey the pure Star Wars feel, because the plots, characters, and events are already so iconic. The story of Malgus is incredibly similar to that of Darth Vader. Emperor Valkorion managed to be even more effective and deadlier than Palpatine himself. And speaking of the Emperor, let's look at the last two cinematic trailers. These stories focus on the beginning of the end of the Eternal Empire, as we first follow the twins Arkan and Thexan, who, being raised under the cruel yoke of their father, grow up as deadly warriors. This is especially true of Arkan, who, in his frustration and desire to please his father, gives himself over completely to hatred, becoming disfigured by battle scars and finally ending the life of his brother. This brutal act finally gets him the acknowledgement he wanted for so long, but at such a great cost. On the other hand, we have the childhood of Vaylin, the twins' younger sister who, also from a young age, is exploited for her power. She eventually becomes corrupted by a cult which removes all hints of humanity from her. While we do see a tragic attempt by her mother to save her, she sadly fails in her goal, and Vaylin fully embraces the dark side. This is another part of the story that is simply fascinating, since the Emperor, in his obsession to instill fear and maintain the utmost power, ended up causing his own destruction, since the one who ends his life is none other than his son, Arkan, who takes his place as a new emperor.
Ironic.
With Vaylin at his right hand. Although a lot of context is not detailed in the trailers, the game and the lore surrounding them is so vast and interconnected that it's no wonder there's been a constant request from the fandom to translate them to live action. Whether into movies or into a TV series, not only do these trailers have a great story, but they are also undeniable works of art that you can appreciate and revisit again and again. From the aesthetic composition, the camera angles, the color palettes, the careful musical selection, and a pace that knows when to be fast and frantic and when to be slow and leisurely. You don't feel like you're watching a video game's cutscene, but rather a short film. Every fight, whether with lightsabers or blaster weapons, feels huge because of the masterful visual storytelling. No matter if you watch them on a TV screen, computer, or your smartphone, the adrenaline hits you and makes you want to jump into the fight and wield a lightsaber, whether for the glory of the Empire or the honor of the Republic. Well, it's unfortunate to think that while many recent Star Wars projects have not nearly lived up to their potential, this small series of trailers has more production value and visual richness in only a fraction of the time. The extended narrative arc is, without a doubt, worthy of being told and seen on a big screen. For this and more, thank you, BioWare, for giving us several of the best hours of our lives, and hopefully, someday, someone will dare to take your stories to live action, because when that happens, we'll be there ready to get excited once again. Check out why we need more stories like this one next.